Well, we've got a bunch of people here. We're looking forward to welcoming William Isom, one of our good friends across town, or now Morristown now. But we'll get to him in just a minute. I'm just going to do a quick introduction like normal, and then I'll pass it over to Jack to introduce William. So let's get started. You all at a pop quiz would get our mission right to research, preserve, and promote the history and culture of Knoxville, Tennessee. Unless we've got any new people joining us tonight. And if so, welcome. Also want to encourage you to take a walk. Now the temperatures are dropping a bit, more in our favor, with Laura Still at knoxvillewalkingtours.com. She'll be happy to give you a guided tour around downtown. And if you'd like to catch up on our latest recorded sessions, you can go to our knoxvillehistoryproject.org website and click on Engage and find the History Happy Hours recorded there. And if you're interested in buying a book or making a donation to support our work, you can click on those links as well. So without more further ado today, I'm going to hand it over to Jack to introduce William.
All right, thanks, Paul, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're lucky to have our friend William Isom here tonight. We were in a project together earlier in the summer, and thought, well, you've spoken to us before. He spoke to us a year or two ago at Maple Hall about his project, but hasn't done a Zoom for us yet, and he's working on lots of different things from the time that we talked to him. But William Isom is somebody we've known for several years. I first met him on the other side of a camera. I think he's been a videographer over the years at ETPBS and has been involved in lots of projects for them and now for his own organization, which is known as Black in Appalachia. But welcome to William Isom. Thanks for joining us, William. And, tell us a little bit about your background, I guess, and what brought you to where we are now.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Hamilton County, Tennessee. I left here back in the 90s and went to Middle Tennessee State University and studied mass communications. Back then they called it radio, television, and photography. So that's what I studied, and when I got out, that's what I did. I worked at WVLT, and I worked at commercial radio stations and community radio stations, and so I came out of media work and eventually settled at East Tennessee PBS over on Magnolia Avenue, and spent about 10 years there working, producing documentaries, interviewing Jack Neely several times, probably half a dozen times, about different things. And we we created this Black in Appalachia initiative, just to, the kind of PBS short 30-minute documentaries. And that project, we started out with the Swift Memorial Institute film, which was at late HBCU in Rogersville, Tennessee, that was spun out of Maryville College. And the response from that was really encouraging. And so we continued to produce these short documentaries. But then the need, as you know, and most people on this Zoom knows, the need to kind of flesh out and make available Black history there's a great need for that, and we'll never run out of work to do. And so we just kept expanding how we researched and made Black history available. And that's kind of where we're at today with Black in Appalachia as its own organization. We still work with East Tennessee PBS, but a lot of the research and compilation of narratives and stuff like that are freestanding now.
Yeah, well, tell us about that. That I've noticed that more than ever in the last 25 years or so, that the Black story has often been left out of the mainstream story, whether people intended to do that or not. In many cases, people just didn't think to investigate something that wasn't obvious in the records, and found out that there's a whole kind of a parallel culture in many ways that was not reported quite as prominently, and therefore is not quite as available to historians as it might have been otherwise. But tell us how you're getting at this with, and tell us, I guess, more about what Black in Appalachia is. Is it just you? Is it what is it? Is it a ongoing thing? Tell us about that.
Yeah. It's and you're right about that. I think that there's the reason we don't have access to a lot of the Black narratives is not because they don't exist, because once you start looking, you find them. And I think there's two different things. Historically, those narratives hadn't been valued, I think, and as important for the historical record. But I also think that we're just now, so I'm approaching 50. I'm the first generation that never lived through formalized segregation. Like my whole life, like I've lived in a completely integrated society. I can vote. All my kids can go to whatever school they want to. I could go to wherever school I wanted to. And so it's like really just now we're able to start to ask those questions and look and have the luxury to look for some of these things. So I think that in 250 years of being here, like we just now have the opportunity to kind of flesh that stuff out outside of a more academic setting. I think public historians now have the luxury and space now to start to engage with some of these stories. Sometimes ugly stories, but also sometimes beautiful stories. So, and Black in Appalachia, we have a small crew. There's probably 5 of us, most part-time people. I've got a young lady over here, Kimora Hunt. She's our she's a high school student. She comes and works after school in our bookshop, and so we've got a bookstore here in Whitesburg. So yeah, we're an organization. We provide support for smaller organizations that want help telling their narratives. We provide research for larger entities. I think we just finished a research paper in Western North Carolina about Black life in Western North Carolina for a healthcare company. And so we do all kinds of stuff, and it's really whatever we can do to cobble together these narratives. It's almost, I mean, it's a little cheesy, but it's almost like, quilting together, these scraps that we're able to find to help tell a narrative that people can understand, yeah.
Tell me when you're, this is a nonprofit, right? And it's a donor supported nonprofit. So that's important for folks to know. But tell me, what are your geographical parameters? We're at KHP, we're pretty much about the city of Knoxville and sometimes venture out into the outer county and in the metro area. But I think you have a wider range, don't you?
Yeah, we say the Mountain South, but in reality, so there's our parameters, formal parameters are as is designated by the Appalachian Regional Commission, which is huge. It's like 13 states and 420 counties. It includes northern Mississippi. I'll probably never go to northern Mississippi and do any work, but in reality, we work in eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, the coal fields of eastern Kentucky, southwest Virginia, the whole state of West Virginia, and southeastern Ohio. So that's, in real life, that's where we go and work with community members. And yeah. Of course, Southern Appalachia is, when people picture it, they picture white people. That's unlike the rest of the South. They think of the Mountain South as being, when they think of the stereotypical hillbilly, it's a white person. And is this, of course, it's not strictly that way. If you look, there are communities that have high densities of Black people throughout Appalachia. And we'll talk more about specifics in that regard. But is this a challenge to you and something you hope to address in some way by bringing out the color of this area? Yeah, I think so. And I think when people think about Appalachia, they don't think about Birmingham. They don't think about Chattanooga. Oftentimes in conversations, people in Knoxville don't necessarily consider themselves to be Appalachian. And so it's like you've got these urban centers, Pittsburgh, Bluefield, West Virginia, which is smaller, Roanoke. But certainly Birmingham, Knoxville, and Chattanooga and Pittsburgh are real cities. So it's not all, the stereotypical cartoon hillbilly that you see. But and I think with this work, there's kind of two different goals. There's to kind of interject these Black narratives into the broader conversations about the region. but that's kind of secondary to providing support for families who are from the region that want to highlight their community's narratives. And I think oftentimes people are just sitting on these stories, and once somebody shows interest, then people get really excited and they're like, yeah, like, let me tell you about my community, High Top community in East Knox County. It's like, let me tell you about High Top. Let me tell you about Oakland. People get really excited when they think that people are interested, because it's almost like they've just been holding on to these stories their whole lives, and don't have venue to express them.
Yeah. Now, do you interview people and they share their memories, oral histories, I guess is what you're talking about, right? And what do you do with these interviews?
Yeah, everything that we produce, the oral histories or even the short films, we put it all up on YouTube. And so we want to make all of these things freely available as possible. So we'll put them up on YouTube. But then also, we have a podcast that's produced by East Tennessee PBS, and oftentimes they kind of use our oral histories as a bank to kind of go in and look at some of these historical narratives from community members and look at them in a more contemporary context. So the oral histories are time consuming, and but there's an analogy that I like to use that somebody had taught me. Darlene Wilson from Wise County, Virginia, told me this when I was younger, that there's kind of two mountains. One's like the vernacular history, the oral history, and one's the official record. And we have to have both of those in order to get an understanding of something that might be close to the truth. And I think those oral histories are really valuable because they can point us in the direction to research, for in the official records, and give us some direction.
Yeah, we'd like to do more oral histories than we do. We always hear about elderly people who have great stories to tell, and it is time consuming, as you say. You have to organize the interview and sit down, drive out to people often at some distance, and then sit down with them for a long time, and then transcribe them. And that's the most time consuming thing. Of course, if you video record it, that may not be as urgent as it seems for us as people who are used to writing things down. But anyway, that's a challenge. You mentioned a couple of communities. One is called High Top, and I'm not familiar with High Top. What and where is High Top?
Yeah, I've found out about High Top recently. It's out south of Carter School, like Carter Elementary and High School,
in East Knox County.
East Knox County, and it's a community that had a school. The school's still standing. Somebody's living in it. Mm-hmm. And the church is still there. It's a Church of God. You kind of had like the school, church, and cemetery in a lot of these rural Black communities, and they have that there in High Top. Joe Armstrong's family, the Armstrongs, are from out that way. Okay. Knox County Commissioner Daisha Lundy, her folks are from out that way. And so there's a rich history out there. I haven't really dug into it apart from visiting, and but the interesting thing with High Top is that you see the relationship between the people that live there and the other communities in, say, Rolling Hill, just across the line in Strawberry Plains, right there where Jefferson County, Knox County, and Sevier County kind of meet in that area. There's a Black community in Rolling Hill, and then there was another Black community in North Knoxville called Oakland, near Fountain City. And those that you see the teachers moving in and between those schools and marrying people in those different communities. And so those connections are really interesting to see once you start to recognize those last names, and they start popping up. The Muldoons is a real important name for the educators in that community. And then you see, like, eventually they get buried in a community that maybe they came from another rural community, and then they've married and they get buried in like High Top, which I don't know. It's interesting to kind of track down the movement and interconnection of these families.
Yeah. We were I was kind of surprised in our Bearden research to find out that there were 4 different Black communities out that way, all rural communities. You mentioned church, school, and graveyard, and that's what you see like on Lions View, and that's one of the communities. But there was Lions View, and then there was the place they called Brickyard, which was down the hill from there on the other side of the golf course, and there's still a church there. And then there's a place called Slatey, which is just gone. It's over off Sutherland Avenue. There's no really trace of it now. But also another place, there was more rural than all those places. Those were all kind of semi-industrial places. But there's a place out in the countryside called Happy Home, which was the charming name for a place out of Middlebrook Pike. There was a farming community, and but this is besides the cities. You mentioned Chattanooga and Birmingham, but there were rural Black communities as well, and just small, low density areas that's part of the story as well. But it's all pretty fascinating. But Oakland was one that we did not know about until we did a driving tour recently of Fountain City, and we included Oakland in that. It's over near Greenwood Cemetery out off Tazewell Pike, and there's still a bit of a core to that community in there. There are still people there who consider themselves Oakland residents, are there?
Yeah, there's still a few left, not many. A few people are still holding on to their homes, but mostly gone. There's some really. I guess I've got some slides if y'all want to see those.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
About Oakland. I'll try not to belabor the Oakland point too much, but this is it's one of the most interesting communities I've, especially having not really heard about it. It seems like in the early record it was called Beverly also, and I don't know if you've come across the Beverly train station or something, but they it's kind of interchanged. It doesn't seem to be called Oakland until a little bit later. In 1891, it seems to start to appear in the record. We did a community history day there and my cousin kind of helped organize it. She's from Sunrise, the Sunrise community, which is in East Knoxville, Millertown Pike area. It's where my folks settled. But my cousin helped us to organize a community history day where we just scan stuff in and do oral histories there in the basement of Foster's Chapel, which I'll tell you a little bit about. Go on to the next one, please. So this is kind of I use these a lot, the U.S. Geological Survey maps. There's a historical USGS mapper online. It's a free tool, and you can search through USGS maps over time. And I don't know what year this was, but you can kind of see there's the Oakland community, and the thing with the flag on it is a church, and the thing with the flag on it's a school. The thing with the cross on it is a church. And then there's little dotted lines that are cemeteries, but you can kind of see it's just really just a couple of streets, and it's almost like a little loop right beside, like Jack said, right beside Greenwood Cemetery. Foster's Chapel was our host, and you can see there it was founded in 1909 by Alvin and named after Alvin Foster. The thing that I kind of sussed out and thought was really interesting, it seemed like Oakland was a rural community. It seemed to be populated by Black families that had migrated down from Union County, Tennessee, and for some reason, upstate South Carolina. And so you had those were the primary areas where the people that formed the Oakland community came from. Why upstate South Carolina? I don't know, but that's where folks came from. I don't know if it had something to do with the railroad or what, but that's what I saw. And so Alvin Foster was one of those early people. Foster's Chapel has moved. The historic church building is still there, and it acts as like a food distribution hub. So they give out food boxes, but the main church has moved closer to town. I think over near, Berea School over on that road. So it's moved into Knoxville proper now, but it's really interesting because there's a woman, Pat Harris, and that church has its own historian. And so if you're ever interested, track down Pat Harris and see what she's got. Here's something you might find interesting, Jack. And I didn't realize I had this until I started picking around. So you can see the Maceo Spanish American War Veterans, number 5. And Alvin Foster, who was the founder of Foster's Chapel, was obviously a Spanish American War veteran. But do you see who's listed right above him as Sergeant Major?
Oh yeah. Joe Etter, who kind of a legendary figure from the about a year later, right, in the riot of 1919. He was killed. Is that right? In the riot, the one black man who was known to be killed at the moment was Joe Etter, and he was fighting when he died. That was right on down the hill from where we are right now at Central and Vine Street.
I had this in the bucket, and I was looking, and I was like, "Oh, there's Joe Etter." Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting.
What about that?
Next slide, please. But Foster Chapel is a really interesting church. There's another church that was in Oakland. Now it's a primarily white church. A different denomination has purchased it, but they maintained it and fixed it up, and so they're keeping it in good shape. But you can see here, this is 1891 when Oakland AME Zion Church formed. The cornerstone was laid, and I think people from all over the surrounding areas came to this AME Zion Church. Okay, I didn't include that. Just I did find a note where there were some rowdy young white men that disturbed the service at Oakland AME Zion Church back in 1920, and then they were reprimanded and sent back home. So Oakland School, that's it's still standing. It's maintained as a recreation center by the city or county of Knoxville. It's part of Parks and Recreation, so it's being maintained. It was built I think it started going in 1891-ish, but it was rebuilt by the WPA in 1936, and so that's a historic picture of Oakland, and then that's the modern time. So it's still being used. That little add-on, I mean, it's kind of blurry, but that add-on to the right is a cafeteria that they built. And that's a photograph that a community member brought in of the students there. It was a two-room school, but that's a lot of kids.
Yeah, that's a great picture.
Yeah. So this elderly woman just had it in her house and shared it with us. But it went up to grade 7, and then the students would go to Austin or high school. Here's what we've been able to compile of the teachers that taught at Oakland. And of particular note is this Mitchell Burke. We tried to go through and suss out little biographies of these teachers just to learn about them and see where they had come from. And Jackie, you may be able to tell me something about this. He was very active in the community, and he was part of the Monday Night Club, which was a literary club for black men that was hosted at Maples Hall.
I would love to look that up. I don't know where that was right now, but I'm fascinated with those literary clubs that came and went, and often had significant people involved.
Yeah, that would have been 1895 when he was a member of that club, the Monday Night Club. And he also helped organize black men in support of the railroad. And he in 1907 he quit teaching and became a full-time mail carrier. And he carried mail in Park City, East Knoxville, and the Mountain View community. Him and James G. Beck went around and made presentations for Postal Improvement Week around the community. So
James G. Beck, the first black mail carrier or mail clerk or something in Tennessee, or what? It was some some significant role. And of course, he was the guy. He and his wife were honored with the name of the Beck Center in Knoxville. He was, James, and he was a name for a Republican and remained a Republican his entire life. And his wife was a Democrat, and they enjoyed canceling each other's votes in that regard. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were, of course, the parties changed a good deal over the years, but yeah, they're a fascinating pair. They were kind of the golden couple of Black Knoxville in the early 20th century.
In 1962, it seems like that the city started to close down Oakland School there were 45 students still there, but the city seemed like that they were consolidating schools, and Oakland was one of those that got consolidated from the city.
Way. Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one. Me and Jack kind of talked a little bit about cemeteries. We don't get into cemeteries much, but the cemeteries in Oakland are really fascinating to me, and I just want to talk a little bit about them, if you don't mind. There's 4 there in that community, which is a lot for a small community. There's Oakland Community Cemetery, which is behind the AME Zion Church. It kind of butts up against Greenwood Cemetery. Band of Mercy, which is kind of on the mountain. Sisters of the Mysterious 10, which is across the street from Foster's Chapel, and then Foster Chapel Cemetery, which is in the back.
I assume that these were named by fraternal orders or sororities of people who would buy into a group and have burial privileges as a result of their membership. Is that right?
I think so, particularly the Band of Mercy and Sisters of the Mysterious 10. Just a quick note, an interesting person that's buried over in Oakland Community Cemetery is this man, Jordan Gibbs, which also is kind of a North Knox County name. He was a grave digger for years and years over in Greenwood Cemetery. And so he lived in Oakland, and he worked in Greenwood Cemetery as a grave digger. And so I found this little note about him in 1916. About him passing away, and it was a pretty lengthy article. So he got his adulations late in the game, but it was quite an article about him. Band of Mercy. So this is where it gets a little weird. So Band of Mercy. I don't know, Jack. Do you know about the Bands of Mercy?
I don't know that specific name, but there were several names, and of course there were white organizations that offered the same kind of thing, but you or joined a fraternity or an order of some sort, and you go to meetings and so forth, but you pay dues, and that's supposed to help you with it's kind of like a life insurance policy as well, with burial privileges. So that's and there were several of these kinds of there are a few off of Keith Avenue in Knoxville as well that are I think collectively called the Westview Cemeteries, but some of them have interesting names like this. And the Oddfellows, of course, in East Knoxville is the same thing. The biggest one of all, I guess, was a big fraternal order that a lot of Black people were a member of, and that's the largest, I guess, one of the largest Black cemeteries in Knoxville.
The Bands of Mercy was like a precursor to the Humane Society, and it was a fraternal organization, but it was their stated goal was to like protect, I mean, they would say like protect dumb animals, but they were like, the precursor to the Humane Society. But apparently the one in Oakland had turned itself into like a secret lodge, and I was told by community members that Foster's Chapel originally started in this lodge over by the Band of Mercy Cemetery. And so they had turned, for whatever reason, you see in this article in 1902, that they had turned it into a secret society, this benevolent organization. And was told that that's where Foster's Chapel started at, and then they built their own building later, a couple of years later. But I thought that this really interested how they took this benevolent society and turned it into something, probably secret handshakes and whatnot. But that's all. There's not a structure there at all for that. And the Sisters of the Mysterious Ten, I had found this book that talks. It was the female auxiliary of the United Brothers of Friendship, which was established in Louisville, Kentucky, before the Civil War. And so it was established by free and enslaved African Americans in Kentucky, and then survived after the U.S. Civil War, and became another fraternal order with its women's auxiliary. So the Sisters of the Mysterious Ten Cemetery has some connection to the female order of this really obscure fraternal organization. We can quit those slides. We can just talk now.
Yeah, that's all new to me. You mentioned earlier a community that you're connected with, Sunrise, in Millertown area. Have you learned much about that?
There's not much at all. There's a couple of photographs I found of the school. My great granddad came out of, after the Civil War, he came out of Gate City, Virginia, where he was enslaved at. And he came down to Hawkins County and married a Whiteside woman who was from Granger County. And they got married and they moved to Sunrise and settled and stayed there. And this would have been 1870s, 1880s. And they lived out there their entire lives and produced my great granddad, who moved. And then my branch of the family moved back to Hawkins County, Hamlin County area. But it was a farming community. The Minotts, the Houstons, of course, the Isoms, my family, these kind of rural Black farming communities. And a lot of them, apart from my family, had been enslaved there or enslaved up Rutledge Pike. And after emancipation, it seemed like that there was a whole body of Black folks, families that came down Rutledge Pike and kind of settled there in what would be the Sunrise community.
Okay.
There's a church still standing. It's a different denomination. There's a cemetery. There's a cemetery there on the corner of Ellistown Pike and Millertown Road, right there on the corner, with a lot of the old historic Black families. The Crockett's are one of those as well. And there's fewer and fewer folks there now. Like it's contracted down to just a few. I've got a few cousins there that are holding on to their property. And Oak Grove A&E Zion Church is kind of part of that too. It's right on Washington Pike. It's a little bit further away, but that was part of the community as well. And a place called Centertown as well, which I don't know much about.
Yeah, Millertown had a lot of association with German immigrants and the Lutheran churches. I don't know if there was any crossover connection with them, but with that, yeah, it's all. There's a lot more to learn as you imply. What makes Black Appalachian culture different from either urban Black culture or low country Black culture or Delta? Are there hallmarks of cultural hallmarks that make it different from the rest of America?
Well, that's a good question. I think that, and this obviously is just my perspective, I think that Black Appalachian culture is the same thing as Appalachian culture. I don't think that you can separate the two from each other, except for the kind of historical narrative. So long, like these communities were living oftentimes in town and around town, and where industry was at, these communities lived in parallel societies. And there were some places where they touched, but I think you can't extract Black Appalachian culture from Appalachian culture as a whole. I think that they're intertwined.
Yeah.
And there's some places where they're more intertwined than others, even in the historical record. But I think, I don't think Appalachia is necessarily unique. I think that Appalachia is part of the South. I think it's been kind of sussed out because of these stereotypes and kind of racial, perceived homogenization of the South. Like, oh, this is the white area of the South. So I think in the same way Black Appalachian culture and Appalachian culture are the same intertwined, I think that like Southern, Appalachian culture is intertwined with Southern culture. We are Southern or mostly Southern, but I think that there's some differences obviously in food and dialect and it's the best place in the States. Like why would you want to live anywhere else? Like, so,
Yeah. There's I guess the same sense of place and the same love of home, I guess, within a Black Appalachia as in any other kind of Appalachia but you mentioned Gate City. Wasn't that the home of Carl Martin, the blues performer who was kind of a Piedmont blues artist, and he of course grew up in Knoxville, but I think his roots were in Gate City. Or up that way somewhere. But that reminds me that the Piedmont blues style that was popular among Black people in the Appalachian region from here to the Piedmont area of North Carolina was significantly different from other kinds of blues styles. It partly because it had more kind of a pop vaudeville sort of derived sound to it. It was more kind of in line with popular music of the time, and they plucked rather than strummed their guitars and kind of came up with different. But of course, Martin Bogan and Armstrong were a great were known for that. But also Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry were part of that sound.
Yeah, and around that same time, there was also Tartar and Gay, and Tartar. I can't remember his first name. Tartar's buried in Gate City, in the Black Cemetery there. So Tartar and Gay were around that time, like Leslie Riddle, Brownie McGee, the early before Brownie kind of went to stardom, and Leslie kind of went to obscurity for a while. But yeah, you're exactly right. Like that's that area, and Kingsport, and I think that the industrial, because it's right outside Kingsport, the Black students would get bused across the state line to go to high school from Gate City into Kingsport, because they didn't have a Black high school. But yeah, you're exactly right. That's kind of where all those guys, and then they would come to Knoxville and really try to make some money,
Yeah, or sometimes the other way around. I think Brownie McGee's family ended up moving from Knoxville to Kingsport because of Kodak and all that was making offering a lot of factory jobs. But you're Black in Appalachia. You got I know several people working with you. You have, I guess, partners who work with you from Ohio to Alabama, don't you? I just saw that on your website. But one of them is a name that's well known here, Kelly Jolly, who's and she's a well known figure on WOT, but she works with you on some things.
Yeah, Kelly Jolly's been around, I guess, since the start, and she's busy because she's a jazz performer, and she's always out doing her thing. Me and Kelly became friends, and back when Knoxville College was still open, and Carpetbag Theater would perform there. I mean, practice there. They would practice there, and so I would kind of, like a little 20-something, just kind of hang around. I wasn't a performer, but that's kind of where I got to meet Kelly Jolly, got to know her at, and she does a lot of the narration for our films. We just finished a series of films on lynchings, short films, and she did all the narration for that. And she's really interested. She just got her master's degree in storytelling from ETSU, and so she's really interested in trying to expand, Black storytelling in the region. And, she takes cues from like Sparky Rooker and even Louis Bluey, those kind of people are people that she pulls from.
And she's also a student of history, especially among Black vocalists like Ida Cox and Leola Manning, are two people who she's kind of helped revive their reputations and careers. Black blues and jazz singers who were here in Knoxville. But tell us about the lynching project a little bit. And you brought up a name that I think a lot of people don't know well around here, Lucien Weaver, who's one of the characters in that story. Want to say anything about him?
Yeah. So we did I think maybe 5 short lynching films, and this is something, as you're going through the record, like you come upon some of these stories, and I really wanted a way to kind of get this research away from me and out into the world so other people could see it. And, and that project really came out of when we were doing the Knoxville Red Summer stuff, and, on the anniversary of that. And what I wanted to do is just produce really short, easily digestible stories about what we know about some of these lynching narratives, because oftentimes there's a lot of speculation and there's a lot of hearsay. And, I think you told me this one time that, newspapers like to print stories about lynchings because it sold newspapers. And so you got to kind of suss out what's being exaggerated to sell papers and what might be the truth. And so we did 5 of these stories. We did the lynching of Samuel Wood in Gate City, Virginia. We did the lynching of Thomas Hunter in Cumberland Gap, Tennessee, 1891. And we did the story of Charles Hurd in Wartburg, Tennessee. But the last one that we did, or the more recent one that we did, was about Lucien Weaver, who was a young man, probably about 19 years old, a black man from North Knoxville. His mother was Hester Weaver, and in 1879, he was accused of sexually assaulting a white woman, a married white woman, in Strawberry Plains, and they arrested him. Some guys, there was a bounty put up. The governor of Tennessee at the time put up $250 for his capture, and so there were people out trying to find this guy, and they found him on the railroad tracks just south of Knoxville, and they brought him to the Knoxville police station, and he originally gave a false name, and then his brother-in-law showed up, and kind of the jig was up, and so they took him back to Strawberry Plains. Milo McBee's store. There's the the McBee's Ferry is more known now that the I guess Knox County Department of Rec has put a boat launch there at McBee's Ferry in Strawberry on the Knox County side of. But McBee's store was the site of the impromptu court proceeding, and they had deputized somebody, so they didn't really have a government out in Strawberry Plains on the border of Knox County. So it was just they got reputable people together to hold court, and they were getting ready to transfer Lucien to Dandridge, to the proper court and jail, and he was abducted, and they took him out towards Sevierville Pike, just right next to the black community there, Rolling Hill black community of Strawberry Plains, and shot him. So it's, they shot him, they didn't hang him, but we classify any extrajudicial murder as a lynching. Sure. And so they had an inquest. They interviewed lots of people, and they convened a jury, and they didn't come up with any indictments out of that, and that was that. Hester, Lucien's mother, rode the train to Strawberry Plains and and identified his body, and they buried him somewhere in Strawberry Plains. But like I said before, the Weaver family, the Black Weaver family, probably came out of Union County, but I don't have any proof or any documentation as to where Lucian's family came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was interesting for me to read, to hear about, and I recommend that 10-minute roughly documentary that you can watch on YouTube. Right, it's easy to see, narrated by Kelly Jolly. What a particular do you have a particular frontier, something you'd like to know a lot more about? Anything that's kind of a holy grail of what you would love to find more about? For me, there are probably 100 things like that, but I just wanted to know if you had any questions that you think we can answer that we haven't answered yet.
For me, the thing that kind of haunts me when I should be doing something else is really those I think those rural Black communities in Knox County is something I would love to see, something come out of, like really some robust research. I kind of pick up pieces as I go, but it would be really great to kind of have an expanded, flushing out of that if I had it. There is one more, there is another, and this is far afield, but really, there's a research holy grail that I've been digging on is, there was, Save the Children Federation built, did all these things in the Appalachian region in the, I guess it would have been the 30s and 40s. It was a charity organization. It was an international charity organization, but they chose Appalachia as one of the places to do charity. And they set up the only Black school that they'd set up was on the border of Hancock County and Hawkins County in Eadson, Tennessee, near Cowles Ford, Tennessee. And they built it as a boarding school, and the teacher came over from Berea, Kentucky, left her husband there, what it looks like, and came over to Berea, to this little community in the middle of nowhere, and established a school. And she called it Freedom School. This is in the 30s and 40s. And it was a boarding school for a lot of the students. And, but it seemed like her social life was in Rogersville. So she would go down to Rogersville for social life. And, I would love, I've been picking at it as I can. But, and also, I think the Black community in Concord, which had a really significantly sized Black community in Concord, Tennessee. I think I would love to see some of that stuff. Some of these little pockets and enclaves of community. I think if I had holy grails, those would be. I would love to see some of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, great. All right. What's your next project? Do you have something you're looking forward to doing in the next year or two?
That's a great question. I have to look at my list. I think, I think we're going to try to do more, like right now, I think dig into the transcription of school records. We've digitized a lot of the school records, but that doesn't do anybody any good if they can't search them by name. And so the transcription of some of these school records, like we did high school that used to be in Knoxville, but still, like we've got some Oakland school records that we'd like to transcribe and make those publicly available. Some schools in Carter County, Tennessee as well. There's also, I think coming up is we're going to continue to try to put together and transcribe and organize some of the Black communities that were displaced by the Tennessee Valley Authority. Mm-hmm. There's more than I thought. And there's not a lot, but there's certainly more than I thought that there would be, such as Bluff City had a Black community, which is in Sullivan County, but then there's also one in Western Hamlin County. And we've not even looked at the French Broad River. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but And I feel like that there's probably something really big that I'm working on that I can't think of right now. That somebody will not yell at me later for not remembering. But yeah.
Well, remind us of your website before I forget to mention that. And this is Black in Appalachia. What's the website? blackandappalachian.org, and look at Facebook and YouTube for all those videos that you made.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done good work, William.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your help over the years as well, Jack.
And would love to offer more. Anything we can help you with going forward. Let us know.